Welcome back to the Fantasy Hockey Podcast and a midweek preview. Normally, of course, this will come on a Monday, but there were no games in the middle of the week, so we released the holiday specials instead. Which, by the way, if you haven't yet, go listen to the holiday specials. We covered the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference and talked about every single team and over 280 players, 281 to be in fact, but I can still say over 280. So anyways, definitely go check those out. And on top of that, there's a giveaway on our Twitter. If you go to our Twitter handle at Fantasy Hockey PD and click on the top tweet. Right there, you'll see how to enter the giveaway. There's 7 different ways to enter. We're giving away 4 sets of beanies and scarves. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be down in the comments below. So what we're going to go through today is we're only going to go through a few things. We're going to go over the drop candidates, the long-term targets, the week preview, and the short-term targets. So dropping the injury report and the week review, just because there's really not much to review. So let's start first with the drop candidates for the week. Now, I know we've talked about this guy quite a bit before, but James Neal, left wing, right wing, still 58% owned, which is shocking to me. He's second line and a 40 to 45 point guy at best. I get he had such a great start to the season. A lot of people are hyped, but 58% is just way, way too high. I would argue that probably 70% of you who own James Neal, honestly, probably higher than that, don't need him on your team. And he's probably your worst forward. I mean, he's barely worth it probably in like a 16-teamer. So I would have no reservations about dropping James Neal at this point, especially now that he's off of McDavid's line. Then there's Andrei Burakovsky, left wing, right wing, another guy that I can't believe is this highly owned right now at this point. 36% owned. He had a hot stretch for a minute, but now he's averaging just 14 minutes a game over the last 30 days with hardly any peripherals to boot. So there's really just not a lot of reason to hold on to Andrei Burakovsky. It's time to give up on him and move on to your next streamer. Then lastly here is Mike Smith, goaltender, still 25% owned. He also had a great start to the season, and he is now one of the worst goaltenders in the league. Second worst by goals saved above average to Martin Jones. You don't like to have that kind of company. That's not good company to have. He's a backup now at this point. Koskinen has stolen the net, and he's also one of the worst goaltenders in the league, so he's not even going to get that many starts. So at this point, you can very safely drop Mike's. I'd rather have no goaltenders than Mike Smith. I'd rather have just one goaltender than Mike Smith. There's a lot of people you can stream in that are much, much better than Mike Smith at this point. He's going to take you a week almost whenever he plays at this point. It's kind of like Martin Jones. There's just no reason to hold on to him. So now let's move into long-term targets. Now I'm going to start first with a guy who's slightly highly owned. That's Brian Russ, left wing, right wing, 62% owned. We talked a lot about him on the podcast, and the reason I'm bringing him up again on long-term targets is because I still think people don't completely get how high his prospects are here. I would even try to trade for him at this point. People are just not valuing him right. I mean, many people are valuing Brian Russ as like a 60-point guy when honestly, if his deployment stays the same, he could be a point per game or higher guy. He's playing fantastic right now. Granted, a few things are out of line right now. His shooting percentage, more than anything, is kind of high. It's 18% versus his career average of more like 14%. So that's somewhere that it should come down. But even with that, he's at like a 93-point pace. And so take away that shooting percentage, and he's still point per game. He's incredible right now. And if that deployment sticks, I mean, hell, he might be worth more than Goudreau in a peripherals league, honestly. But the thing is that there's risk there, of course, because if come playoff time, for example, Crosby's back and his deployment goes to hell, then all of a sudden now he's not worth very much, right? So you've got to be careful with the trade that you make. For example, I wouldn't be against a Timo Meier for Brian Russ trade, a Nikolai Ehlers for Brian Russ trade, that kind of thing, where really if you end up missing out on Brian Russ deployment later on in the year, you didn't miss out on that bad of a player. Like you're not missing that big of a player, right? Timo Meier, for example, that might be one of the bigger names that I think of that I would trade quite a bit for Brian Russ. And I would absolutely reach out to the Brian Russ owner, especially if they're towards the bottom of the league, and see. Because also another thing is, for example, in my keeper league, which is all peripherals except for PIMS, what happens with Brian Russ is he's ranked 180th overall. But when you dive in, because he missed some time, right? But when you look at his average stats, he's actually 12th in the entire league right now. And so that's why people are undervaluing him too, is because his rank does not properly show how good he's been and how good he will be. And so that's something to watch. And that's why I target him in a trade. He's a prime trade target when things like that happen. Then in net, there's Antti Ranta, goaltender, 64% owned on Arizona. Kemper is apparently week to week, and Ranta's been amazing here for a hot minute. Don't be fooled. He has been great. He hasn't gotten as much goal support, so he hasn't gotten as many wins as Kemper. That's kind of thing. His win percentage isn't as great as Kemper's, but that's solely because of goal support from his offense. It has nothing to do with Antti Ranta. So he's someone I'd absolutely target as a third goaltender, or if you need a second goaltender right now. And who knows, maybe if Antti Ranta can put together a really good week here, potentially he could get maybe some more starts here going forward, which I would love to see. Then there's Connor Murphy, defenseman, 4% owned. So these next two guys here are Chicago defensemen, very lowly owned for bangers leagues, dynasty, and whatnot. People you should absolutely be paying attention to. So now Seabrook and Calvin DeHaan are out rest of season. So that opens up the door for a few other defensemen. And more than anything, it opens the door for two Bengals defensemen. Connor Murphy is a Bengals gem, as is the next guy I'll talk about. 4% owned, like I said, super consistent. He's just under 2 shots a game, just over 2 hits and 2 blocks a game. But then the guy I actually like the most for full bangers leagues is a 1% owned guy, defenseman, in Dennis Gilbert on the Chicago Blackhawks. Hits and blocks have just been ridiculously consistent and super high. On top of that, he's averaging almost a penalty a game right now. That is huge. If you're in a PIMS league, a guy that is that consistent in penalty minutes, is fantastic. And on top of that, like, you can't find that on the wire very easily. Now, on top of the PIMS, let's say you don't have PIMS. Fine. Guess what? He's still averaging 4 shots and 4 hits a game. Yes, a game, those two. And just under 2 blocks a game as well. Dennis Gilbert is a gem on the wire at 1% owned that in deeper leagues you should be all over. And at worst, he's a streamer and all these peripherals come back down to earth at some point. But if not, he is amazing, especially on a shortened week like this, where if you might have a defenseman slot, you can probably take peripherals with one of these two guys because they're going to be so consistent. And Chicago has 2 games here on Friday and Sunday. So 2 guys to pay attention to. And with so low ownership, they are probably, and I'd say more than likely, going to be available in your league. Now, moving on to the week preview, let's switch it up, because usually, of course, we do the 4+ games and 2 less games. Obviously, that's not going to be the thing here this weekend. So what I want to say is that there's 2 ways to maximize your starts this weekend. One way is to pick up for Friday and then pick up someone that plays Saturday and Sunday. And so, of course, you have to look forward at your roster and see what spots do I have. For example, like on one of my teams, I have a defenseman spot open Friday and Saturday. And then for Sunday, I have something open for whatever position I want. Or in another league, for example, I have something, I think it's a forward slot or wing spot open on Friday, but then Saturday, Sunday, I'm completely wide open for whatever I want to do. And so the way to play this weekend is you can add 3 potential starts more likely than not, because they're also slightly heavy days. You may need to bench a forward, something like that. So you can potentially add up to 3 starts by what you do is you either pick up for Friday and then you pick up Saturday, Sunday, or you pick up Friday, Saturday, and then pick up for Sunday. I'm a fan of either of those two. You can pick up someone for Friday and Saturday, and then on Sunday tackle whatever category or kind of upside thing you need, or you can prep for next week, or you can just max out the starts and take a Friday, Saturday person, and then Sunday. I think I might have already said that. Maybe I already said that. But you can also do Friday and Saturday and then Sunday. You get the point. Just maximize that way, because that's how you add 3 starts. Adding for just Friday and Sunday doesn't really make that much sense. And when I took a look at the people that are out there just aren't that many great options for Friday and Sunday to risk that 1 extra start in a week that's already extremely hard to get starts. So the teams that play Friday and Saturday are going to be Carolina, Nashville, New York Rangers, Pittsburgh, Toronto, Washington, Colorado, the Los Angeles Kings, the San Jose Sharks, and the Vegas Golden Knights. And then teams that play Saturday and Sunday are going to be Arizona, Dallas, Detroit, Florida, Montreal, Philadelphia, Tampa Bay, and the Vancouver Canucks. So knowing that, let's move into short-term targets. Now, the first one is going to be Eric Howla, center left wing, 20% owned. He's on the 3rd line with Dzingel and Netchas right now. So slightly fine line. The thing with Eric Howland, the reason he's on short-term targets is he's just so unsustainable. Over 20% shooting on the season. His on-ice shooting percentage is ridiculously high too. I personally give him a short lease just because you don't know what's going to happen here. Now, he has been consistently unsustainable all season, but at some point, this usually does come back down to earth, especially when you're not getting as many minutes. And Eric Holla does have slightly low minutes being on that 3rd line. So give him a short leash, but for right now, while he's hot, picking him up for Friday, Saturday is a fantastic play. Now, on defense, there's a guy I really like for that Friday, Saturday play from Nashville. That's Matthias Ekholm, who's been good here for a little bit. Defenseman, 66% owned, but shockingly was available in my pretty competitive 12-person league. 9 points in his last 12 games. Solid shot pace. That's up 36% on the season. And his block pace isn't bad either, up 18% on the season. So that's not bad. And then you have a center left wing who I recommended for the weekend actually prior, and that's Zach Hyman, center left wing, 18% owned. Toronto has an amazing schedule Friday and Saturday in the Devils and the New York Rangers. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. And the New York Rangers, again, last time, remember I suggested Hyman against the Rangers just because they're two of the highest scoring teams in the league. And so usually when those two play, there's a ton of goals shared. And when there's a ton of goals shared, guys like Zach Hyman have more of a chance of getting in on goals. And so that's why I like him for these next few days. And then there's Nick Schmaltz. Can't believe I'm recommending him, but again, a short-term target, right? Center, left wing, right wing, 42% owned. He's had a little bit of a resurgence here. He's playing really, really well with Keller right now. Of course, no peripherals, so this is solely for points leagues, but he's worth a flyer right now while he's on Keller's wing, and just playing so well. He's kind of racked up multi-point games, so he's doing that thing he did at the beginning of the season where it's a little bit unsustainable, but nonetheless, he has actually a 0% shooting over the last 7 days, so he hasn't scored a goal in a little bit here, but he's been doing well from an assist standpoint. Then there's Noel Achari. I said Acciari before. I was corrected. Grammar school. Achari. Center right wing, 21% owned. I'd pick him up for the minutes in the deployment. Give him a short leash, though, because remember, the reason he's so picked up right now is, aside from those minutes, he had 2 hat-trick games, and people freak out when players have multi-point games in a row, especially when it's hat-tricks, but that makes him wildly unsustainable. So again, give him a short leash, but I really like him while he's on this second line with Huberdeau and Trocheck, and why not see what he can do? And he's getting around 18-ish minutes a game, which isn't bad. So I picked him up in one of my leagues for this Saturday, Sunday slate, because that's when I had a room. So I picked up Achari for that to stream there. So he's a good streamer option, in my opinion. Then you have Andre Palat on the Tampa Bay Lightning, left wing, 27% owned. Top line with Point and Kucherov, but he's on the second power play. So pick him up mostly for those 5-on-5, for that 5-on-5 deployment with Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov. But he's been good here, and he's actually been really, really consistent. So Andre Palat is one of those guys who is a short-term pickup, but could potentially be more of a long-term, medium-term pickup if he keeps this up at 5-on-5, especially in deeper leagues, since he's only 27% owned. And lastly, Chris Kreider, left wing on the New York Rangers, 52% owned. He's fine for now while the deployment is good. He's on the top line, on the top power play. And again, he's playing Toronto, who lets in a lot of goals, which is a really good matchup for him. So I like Chris Kreider. He's been shooting a lot more. So I like Chris Kreider right now, but I also kind of like him as a more medium-term option as well, to be honest. I've liked what he's been doing recently. So he's just someone to pick up right now and hold for a little bit. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed the very quick midweek preview here. Good luck in this week. It's really hard to add anybody this week, and it's really hard to gain a start advantage over your opponent. So that's why I'm saying to do this Friday and then Saturday, Sunday, or Saturday and Sunday, or Friday, then Saturday, Sunday, or Friday, Saturday, then Sunday. Yes, that's how it is. I keep mixing that up. Anyways, it's hard to do it. So just be smart about it. Try to max out your starts there and tackle your categories as you can. So really pay attention to which categories you think you can win or steal and focus on those, because in weeks where it's hard to add starts, when you try to add too much across the board, sometimes you're going to fall flat in a few. So focus on the ones that you can win and tackle those. So there you go. We will catch you. Oh, I think we might. We're not doing a weekend preview. This is kind of the weekend preview. So we will see you for the week preview for next week's episode. And other than that, we'll probably have a live stream somewhere in here in the weekend. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.